Welcome to the 500th episode of Acts of the Blood God, an independent RPG podcast. I'm your host, Kat Bailey. Joining me, as always, my lovely co-host, Nadia Oxford.
Hello, Kat. 500 is as many as 5 100s, and that's not terrible at all.
Still here, still queer, still doing Acts of the Blood God. Also joining us is our equally lovely co-host, Eric Van Allen.
Hi, I'm here to make all the buttons go today. We have a lot of buttons, so get excited for that.
Beep boop.
He's juggling a lot of plates. Let's hear it for him.
Look, the coffee keeps me going.
And joining us, also, right from the editing bay, it's Victor Hunter.
And I would cast 500 more just to be the man who cast 500 pods to fall down at your door. Everybody!
And that's when everybody turned off the show.
Bye, everyone. Show's over.
For our 500th episode, we will be looking back at 10 years of RPGs, because that's how long we've been doing this show. It's crazy. The first ever episode of Acts of the Blood Guide, as we mentioned last week, was on February 20th, 2015. A lot of RPGs have been released in that time. We all compiled our lists of the top 10 RPGs to be released in the last 10 years. And so we'll share all of ours. We'll share the big list, and we'll pick the best RPG released in the last 10 years. Over the 10 years that Acts of the Blood God has existed, spoiler alert, it's not Baldur's Gate 3. And we'll get some of your picks, and we have some of our old pals from the podcast over the years sharing their picks as well. So stay tuned for that. And then, in addition, in the tavern, we'll be talking about Monster Hunter's technical problems. We'll be talking about the time that one of BioWare's co-leads apparently considered launching a hostile takeover of EA. And we'll be talking a little bit about the Pokemon Presents. So please look forward to that in the second section. Before we get to that, if you enjoy the show, as always, please consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/bloodgodpod, where for just $5 a month, you get the show ad-free. You get the premium version of our newsletter. You get access to a lot of bonus content in our backlog, including our entire Autumn of Avatar and Summer of Korra watches, among others. Go check that out in our backlog if you're at the $5 level. We're also doing a side quest this coming week. Side quest alert, a huge side quest approach. It's the 25th anniversary of the PlayStation 2, and we are going to be doing a PS2 draft, a PS2 RPG draft over the course of, I believe, 7 rounds, in which we all pick our best possible RPG library, plus one non-RPG to round it out. It's a little spicy. It can be the honorary RPG pick, but where will we draft it? I don't know. We'll be recording that on Tuesday, March 4th, and the episode will be out March 5th. Couple more items. That merch that I mentioned, our 10th anniversary merch, shop.bloodgodpod.com. It's out right now. You can go buy it. Cool
buy
zip hoodies.
Stop
cool
being
mugs. Stop being naked.
Put clothes on.
There's a lot of really great stuff. Thanks to Nino Matsumoto. Dayumi as well. We got this amazing desk mat that I ended up buying. I bought a whole bunch of excellent merch. So go and check that out as well. Okay. And finally, the newsletter. Subscribe to us over at bloodgodpod.com. Whew. Jeez, there's so much housekeeping these days. Yeah, Nadia works really hard on it. What was the last newsletter, Nadia?
Last newsletter, I talked a bit about actually the Pokemon Presents, which I'm sure we'll cover in this here episode. But I talked mostly about, I kind of built on a article that friend of the show, Kenneth Shepard, wrote trying to remember the angle because it's been a couple of days already. But right, just the separation of Pokemon fighting and Pokemon story. Like we'll get into that, I'm sure. But I kind of covered that. I had a musical recommendation, which for this week I'll just spoil it. It was the gym leader theme for Pokemon X and Y. Severely underrated piece of techno. Go listen to it. You can actually, I think that's a free newsletter, so you can look it up on our archives, if I'm not mistaken.
Blogoutpod.com. It's right there.
Yeah.
Excellent stuff.
Oh, I said something about Mankey. Yeah, I had a line about how Pokemon was getting too unwieldy, and you have 1,000 like little critters running around. And so, like at some point or another, a Mankey's going to escape and rip someone's nuts off. So that's the analogy I used for the Pokemon, basically for Game Freak. They have a lot to handle, and if you have a zoo, and that zoo gets out of control, it's infamously known that a chimp has to be kind of put down because they will absolutely tear
your
people's
face
nuts off.
So wait,
And that too.
If the zoo goes nuts, all the cages open, I want to be the furthest from the
chimp,
the orangutans and the chimps and stuff like that.
Orangutans are very nice. Orangutans are human. It's actually creepy. They're very chill.
I need to know this in case the zoo ever goes crazy.
This is a Pokemon zoo, so Mankeys, chimps, same thing. We'll just say like we both have the terrible temperament. So yeah, you should absolutely read the newsletter. This is the kind of stuff you'd be getting if you read the newsletter. I have analogies.
Do you think they have zoos in Pokemon? Probably not, right?
That is so disturbing to think about because, I mean, Mr. Mime lives with Ash's mom, but he eats off the floor.
Indeed. Axel the Blood God, 500 episodes. This is what we're talking about. Okay. Let's head into the main topic, our 500th episode, the 10 best RPGs of the last 10 years. So we've done several of these specials now. Our 100th episode was the RPGs, or the RPGs that are kind of defined us, why we love RPGs. That was the one that Nadia and I did. Episode 200 came out of the closet. That was a closet episode. RPG Bests that we did live at PAX East. That was where we launched the console RPG Quest. Episode 300 was RPG Firsts. That was the first special of the Patreon era. Episode 400 was, so what is an RPG anyway? We kind of returned back to the beginning. And now it's been 10 years, so we're going to look back at the 10 best RPGs of the last 10 years. And we all made lists. We weighted those lists, and we got, miraculously, 10 games. But there were 4 RPGs that were tied at 2. And now we're going to hang out, and we're going to decide what order those RPGs should be in among us as we fill out the list. And here are the games: Persona 5, Fire Emblem 3 Houses, Xenoblade Chronicles 3,
Woo!
and Octopath Traveler 2.
Woo!
Which one of those is the best?
Here's
That's
the
like
weird
asking
thing.
which Pokemon is the first. You have a bunch of answers.
If I had to
I think
pick
Persona
one of
5 is the
those-
obvious choice.
Yeah. I think P5 is a pretty standout choice amongst those. And I say that as somebody who I don't think I put. Yeah, I didn't have P5 on my own personal list, but I do think that is probably just pound for pound the most well-rounded RPG of that group, I would say.
I think it's been one of the defining RPGs of the last several years, actually. It really defined a lot of what JRPGs look like these days, not just in terms of style, but in terms of the battle system. And it's worth mentioning that especially the Hoyoverse RPGs like Honkai Star Rail borrowed a lot from the vibes of Persona 5.
To be clear, this is the bottom 5 of our list, right? This is
The bottom 5.
right,
bottom
right.
4.
Because there's the bottom. Yeah, we're trying to determine 4 of these games that get through to make the top 10 because we already have 6 above them.
We have 6 above them.
Yeah, I was just clarifying that for the listener at home. I think if I'm looking at the one that I think makes it through for sure, I think it's Persona 5. And if I look at the one that I'm most likely to say falls off, I think it might be Fire Emblem. I know.
Oh,
I'd
I
say
didn't- I didn't
all
include
four
Fire
of them
Emblem.
can go on the list because I accidentally put Persona 5 twice.
wait, what?
Well, there you go. It wins. I mean, duh.
Yeah, these are
math.
put on the list. We're
Persona
just determining what
5
order they go in.
Persona 10.
Production
Sounds
note:
like
Persona
Square.
5 is on this list twice.
Persona 25.
Victor, I think looking at this list, only Fire Emblem Three Houses was on your list.
Yeah, I'm. Look, in a month's time, we're all going to have reassessed Xenoblade X, and you're all going to be kicking yourselves for not putting Xenoblade X on this list because it came out in 2015. But I mean, I would put Three Houses above Persona 5. Persona 5 is a stylish, lovely game that is 30% too long, has 40% too much extraneous dialogue, and ultimately has toothless commentary. It's still a lovely game. I enjoy it a lot. But it is I mean, even Fire Emblem Three Houses I think is bloat. I think all four of these games have a little too much bloat. Maybe Octopath Traveler 2 the least.
Which is crazy because that's still like a 90-hour RPG.
Yeah, that's a long ass game.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with you there. I do not disagree with you there. I think all four of these games are very unique in the amount of space they take up. They're beefy lads.
And I think that represents a trend, especially because these are all JRPGs, a trend that JRPGs need to aim for this bloat and this length that is completely unnecessary. We can be more economical with our games than what these four represent. But I think just because Persona 5 doesn't need to tell me the rules of its world 50 million times, and because it holds your hand through, like, it ostensibly has a time limit, but it really doesn't because it makes sure you can accomplish everything. You're never sacrificing anything. There's no mutual exclusivity to a run beyond who you decide is your soulmate kind of thing.
Makoto.
Here's
Motorcycle.
I didn't put Three Houses on my list.
Me neither.
See, I didn't put Persona 5 on my list.
Me neither.
Those other three games are all on my list, but Persona 5 is not.
Yeah.
None of those four games were on my list.
Wait, none of those? No, I don't believe
Not
that.
even-
I'm scrolling back up to
you didn't
Cat
play
Bailey's
Octopath
list.
Traveler, did you?
Fact
Persona 5. Okay, Persona 5 is on my list. It was at number 5.
Yeah, okay.
Fire
I was
Emblem
gonna
Three
say,
Houses, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and Octopath
you
Traveler
don't like
2
Three
did not make
Houses
the cut.
because you married the church.
I don't like Three Houses
That's-
because I find the tactical aspects pretty two-dimensional at best.
you have
And I
to
think
go
that
back and
the
get
school
romance right.
section, the school section's a lot of fun in the first half and pretty perfunctory and rote in the second half, and it's way
I
too
agree
easy
with
to
that.
power game this game. I like it a lot, but I like Fire Emblem Engage miles better than Three Houses, and would play that again in a heartbeat.
Yeah, engaged. Gang,
Let's
rise
go!
up. Go. Ha, ha, ha.
I almost put Fire Emblem Fates as my pick for Fire Emblem.
Oh,
That's
let's
a pick.
go! No,
That's
that's
a
a pick.
Yeah,
I love it actually. Yeah.
Wait. So
Me
like
too.
all of Fates or like a specific one of Fates?
Oh, Fates. Let's just I'll include everything that Fates is in
You're not
Fates.
gonna be like Fates parentheses Conquest.
Conquest. If I had to, I would say Conquest only. But I think
Conquest is the one.
Fates does have those other roots. Look, I think Three Houses carried over one of the best parts of Fates, which is you just gotta pick one, and you gotta commit to that, and whatever befalls the story in that side is what you have to deal with. And I think that's bold and fun. It also, depending on the routes you take, it stays away from some of the more fantastical elements that sort of trivialize the stakes of the story and makes it more personal and political and gut-wrenching and grounded, depending on what route you take. Obviously, some of them get a little more woo woo. But
Ooh, woo woo.
Woo wow.
yeah.
I didn't know Wuthering Waves is on this list.
So my pick for these bottom 4 is Three Houses, Persona 5, Xenoblade 3, Octopath 2.
Now that we're talking about grounded tactical RPGs, Tactics Ogre Reborn was like a fringe case for me on this list.
Yeah.
Really?
It was one I
the
ended
remake
up,
of the Tactics Ogre?
It was one I ended up not going with because I felt like putting a remake of a game that was mostly the same as it was back when it came out was not in the spirit of this list. But I do think it was one where I had that brief moment of like that game did like fundamentally like triangle strategy was also like a fringe case for me. I think I have liked triangle strategy more and more as time has gone on, and it has just continued to like grow in fondness in my heart since then. And
It's a good game.
yeah, I would love to see more of that at some point. But I do think if I had to pick one to move on, I mean, we haven't talked about Xenoblade yet. Xenoblade I have on my list, but I do
You really
feel like,
loved that. You were like, the
I
year
have
that
on
it
my
came
list.
out, you were like, game of the year, game of the year. You
it
and
was
Nadia
not
basically
my
talked
goatee.
about it
was
all
not
year.
My goatee.
It was. I don't know if it was
You were
my
like,
goatee, but it was
goatee,
great.
this is the goatee.
It was in my top 3, I think.
Yeah.
But I do think if we're talking about RPGs that have bloat, oh boy, Xenoblade. Oh, there's so much in that game.
You played 2? You want to talk about bloat, but
Yeah.
it's all beautiful bloat.
There's so much
lovely.
in that game. But I love
Such great.
the opening of Xenoblade 3 is the craziest thing I've seen in RPG in some time because they just do Starship Troopers. It's just Starship Troopers, the RPG.
Oh, is that what? Except they all die in 10 years?
Yes, yeah. But there's a great like series of scenes where you're introduced to the weird lives that they lead as these like born and bred soldiers for this never-ending death clock war, and it's honestly still one of my favorite openings in recent memory for an RPG. No more amnesiac boy wakes up in a town and meets some childhood friend or something. We need more like the death clock soldiers are marching off to war.
What if Starship Troopers was the friends that we made along the way?
Exactly.
Somebody in the chat was like, so how about those Trails games, huh?
They absolutely deserve a mention across the past 10 years.
Honorable mention? Are we doing honorable mentions?
I mean, we have to because I cannot, like, I have played, like, very few games, and it's a very long and intensive series that deserves, like, its own dissection. You could probably go, like, what are the best Trails games? Or does it say Trails or Tales?
Trails.
Trails.
Trails. You could do
Tales would be a hard one because there's only been like 2 or 3 in the last decade. Tales
there
has
was
been in a lot of
Arise,
remasters,
and there was Berseria came out.
Berseria, which is probably my favorite of all the ones that have come out in the last decade.
But I can't sit here and say, this Trails game deserves to be number 1 or pass across 10 years because it's just such a dense series by
Trails
itself.
of Cold Steel?
Well,
that's great, but it's
what
not
I was going to ask was if there's a Trails game, chat, like let us know which one, because I feel like the Trails sickos always talk up the games, but then I'm like, oh, what are the really good ones? And it jumps back to older ones.
But it's the whole series is the game. It's the best one.
Yeah, that doesn't work for me.
Trails in the Sky.
You can't do that to me. Like
the whole game.
Soapbox for me today. I get that Trails is a story that builds on itself, and that's like the big appeal of it as a series. But I do think you can pinpoint individual high notes within that long-running series and say this is where it hit its peak, because too many people are like, oh, Trails is just, it's one big thing, and you have to talk about it that way, and you can only see it as one giant continuity. No, they're absolutely, it's like saying Lord of the Rings is only good if you watch all of Lord of the Rings. Nah, fuck that. Fellowship of the Ring fucking rules.
It does.
I say Two
like
Towers.
Cold Steel and Daybreak are kind of the ones that come up to me a lot when people say like jump in here or like this is the one to play.
I've heard the Cop Route's good too. I forget what it's, the Crossbell arc, I believe is what it's called.
Yeah,
Cop Route.
Yeah, the Cop Route. Yeah, Azure and
Really
Zero. Yeah,
I love the cat, little black thing. There's
I have a
in
soft spot for Cold Steel 4 and Reverie, is what Split Infinitive said, who was asking about Trails before. Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying is there's definite high peaks. And so like celebrate them. It's don't give me that sales pitch of like you'll love Trails once you catch up to where I'm at, cuz then nobody's ever going to play your video game.
I agree with
If
that.
you play a dozen RPGs, just devote your life to playing this series. You will love it.
If I'm on a desert island, I wouldn't mind having the Trails games. Desert
Oh
Island,
yeah,
full
that's a
series,
great
I'm good.
desert island franchise right there.
Then someone
And you
comes
can
by to
start
rescue
over
me. I'm
and
like,
do it
I'm
again.
still in the middle of this. Go away. Come back in a year.
We drove this man insane by leaving him on an island with just Trails games for a year.
So Octopath 10, Xenoblade 9, Persona
yeah.
8, Fire Emblem 7.
I want Persona 5 at number 7 myself.
Well, that's
I mean, it's quibbling, but I think Persona 5's better. I do.
Persona 5 was pretty close to the top of my list. I feel like this is like, okay, if you have like a, I don't want to call it a normie RPG by any means necessary, but like just, it brought a lot of people into the
I'd call it a
genre.
normie RPG for sure.
It is, okay, because I mean, it has that style, and I know that the political commentary is toothless now, but at the time, it was really interesting to see
It's
Japan's
not toothless.
perspective.
It has
is
way more to say
truthfully.
than like virtually any RPG that's come out in the last 10 years. I'm sorry.
Right? Really? I don't know about all
It
that.
came out right in the wake of the Fukushima nuclear reactor disaster, and it was an examination of Japanese politics then and now, and what was happening to society
I
and
do like
power.
Cat
I agree with that.
Cat is cooking, but here's the thing: both of you are right.
Yeah, it does all of that, and it treats people who abuse their power as an aberration that we just need to fix. And once nice people are in power, everything's fine. It's just
I want to see some of the
viewer.
people we have running the show these days get up there and piss their pants while making a sobbing apology. I would
Exactly.
be good with that.
I-
I'd be okay
I-
with that.
I should get the
But
notebook that I
steal
write.
Elon Musk's heart. Oh my God.
I
I don't
write
wanna
their
go into
name
that
in the
dungeon.
notebook, and then they piss themselves live on television. I get the piss note, and that's my
for a game.
Persona
that is
5 music
about-
cuts in.
Persona 5 parentheses the piss note.
It's supposed to be about Jungian archetypes and the Akashic records and all of these all of these things that are foundational to metaphysics and the collective unconscious. But then it ultimately says nothing about the systems that uphold those things.
This is
other
also,
than-
here's the thing, Japan was not really a country to come out and talk about its politics in video games that I remember, just being from my own perspective. I feel like this is the first time I saw just a Japanese-centric game saying these are our problems, and maybe they didn't resolve them in the way they should have, like as an art kind of
So
perspective.
I think the first section is really emblematic of the fact that you beat the abusive teacher. That does not solve the problems within your school. Things do not magically get better. People are
beat the
still
teacher was great.
very traumatized. In that way, I think it is saying something about the systems that are at work.
The
in here.
teacher arc is also a great example of ways in which this game falls flat, because then it goes on to take On, who is like the target of the teacher arc for a good part of that, and then just have her do all the like tee-hee, I'm in compromising situations with various boys in the group. Like there's a lot of writing out there about that I encourage y'all to dig into. But I do think that both things can be true with Persona 5
Yeah.
in that it takes a lot of swings, and I do think a few connect. I also think a few do not connect, and it's important to like recognize that game for what it is. In some ways, it's why I personally I don't have P5 on my top 10, but if I was gonna put like one of its style of games on here, I would lean probably closer to P3 Reload or Metaphor, because I think both of
Interesting.
those
I would
games
put
handle
Metaphor
their
over it.
broader themes
Yeah.
a little bit better.
I think Reload has a better story, even though it borrows a lot from Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Well,
I
they
think
all did
Persona
at that
5 takes much bigger swings than Persona 3 and is a much more complex game. And it's really cool. It's a really cool game. But I kind of want to throw to this chat. Chat, What do you think? Persona 5 or Fire Emblem Three Houses should be higher? I don't know if we can do a poll in the chat to go check or something like
Let me
that,
see
or
what
just have
activities I can
people like
initiate.
say. But we've been talking about this. Does anybody want to say anything about Octopath Traveler 2 since it came up on
God
quite a few
damn, what a
lists?
beautiful game. What a great game. It deserves everything. And I know it's up against some really tough competition, but when you look at it, there's something niche about it that can't really compete with anything else. It's really its own thing, and I adored it. One of my favorites of the past 10 years for sure. I mean, come on, you have Particio.
The peak of the HD 2D
All right,
form.
there's one in the chat. There's a poll in the chat.
The enemy sprites in that game are some of the best I've seen in a video game. Like, just a gorgeous game. And the music, holy shit.
Octopath Traveler 2 is a game that should not have been good. Because the first Octopath Traveler was, I think, ultimately a warm blanket, but just like it's like the old warm blanket you've had like from your childhood home that you brought with you to the apartment that you moved into after you moved out and all that. It's familiar. You know what it is. But then you go to the store and you pick up this new blanket. It kind of looks like your old blanket, but you find out like, oh, they're doing new blanket stuff and it feels great. This feels crazy. They've been doing this with blankets. Look at the ways in which we have taken the blanket, the classic form of warmth and comfort in the home. But look what we've done with it since. But it's still just a blanket. That's Octopath Traveler 2. Is like that blanket goes crazy. That blanket has incredible
The blanket goes
turn-based.
hard.
Yeah, the turn-based mechanics in Octopath Traveler 2 are, I think, some of the most interesting, just little variations and nuances of archetype building and party building and crafting a team that then operates like a machine inside the actual fight while still like forcing you to make really interesting decisions during big boss battles and having to think about all these different things, but also keeping the play space fairly directed. You never feel like you're overwhelmed. There were so many different ways that I felt like I could use my party members to enable each other. And then some of the end boss fights in each individual route, I think of Casties, the one that takes place in the
so
rain.
good.
What an
Fantastic.
incredible boss fight with such an amazing, interesting mechanic that just had me sitting there afterwards like, I can't believe what I just played. That was amazing. And then I think most of, maybe not all, but most of the end boss fights, but even some of the like chapter 2, chapter 3 boss fights were just absolutely incredible ways of pushing the player to use these turn-based mechanics. And then they actually pulled off the 8-person story, mostly by not having it center on the 8 characters, instead having, without too many spoilers, like very well-planned coordination of locations, characters, and places that then were manipulated in a way to give you this really great like 11th hour twist that I did not see coming and I was completely dumbfounded by and loved every second of. It's that great moment when you're like, oh, this is what's been going on the entire time. This is how all these stories were kind of interlinked, and it's just the thing that Octopath Traveler wanted to be. It is that blueprint fully realized, and I love it.
Also, probably the best use of NPCs in an RPG to date. Like, you had some brilliant stuff going on with the characters you recruited, sometimes the way you interacted with characters. Like, I think there was that one, I can't remember, I'm paraphrasing here, but there's that one woman who says something about, like, I have this object on me that's really, like, I'm so distressed, and I'm thinking too hard about my husband, and you find she has a picture on her, so you take the picture and you rip it up, and she's like, hey, that's great, thanks. Just stuff like that, and, like, hiring NPCs to fight for you, and you can kind of tell their story. Like, this game tells so many little tiny stories in such brilliant ways. Like, if you have not played Octopath Traveler 2, and you are waiting on that or hesitating, and like, oh, I haven't played 1, don't worry about that. Play 2. Like, this is definitely one of the must-plays of the past 10 years, for sure.
Chat has spoken, by the way, and they say that Fire Emblem should go higher than Persona.
Oh,
very well.
Spicy.
Wow.
Spicy chat.
Fire Emblem Three Houses is at number 7. Sounds like Persona 5 is number 8. Xenoblade number 9 and Octopath number 10. So kind of where we're landing.
I'm fine with Octopath on the list. That's absolutely.
I just wanted to be
We're
there.
happy to have it on the list. Okay.
Welcome to be there. Particio.
Let's now share
Particio
the rest
so much.
of the top 6 of the final list. And coming in at number 6, it's NieR Automata, which just recently got a Pantheon with a Blood God episode, I believe, last year. You should go check it out. Nadia played it for the very first time, had her mind blown by it.
I find that I love and hate Yoko Taro games so much. They make me cry like crazy. Like, something about the way that man depicts human loveliness, even if it's through a dwarf in a Final Fantasy game, is fucking brilliant. Like, he just touches something in me that I just, like, it hurts. It honestly does. But I absolutely adore NieR. The boss music for basically the fight against... I'll put it this way, okay. I don't think I shit my pants any harder in a game than I did when I got into that silo and the door slammed behind me and the robot started saying, become as gods, we are gods.
As
and it's
gods.
like, become as gods, and the birth of a wish starts up. That's so fucking incredible.
Nadia,
Absolutely great game.
have you played NieR Replicant?
I must, and I have not yet.
You should really play NieR Replicant because it will make you love NieR Automata all that much more. It is...
I hear,
they are the two faces of the same moon in that you never see all of one at the same time as the other, but they round each other out in a way that makes it so much cooler. The moon, half the moon is pretty sick, but the full moon is awesome.
I gotta get that moon action, man.
NieR Automata was number 9 on my list and number 9 on Nadia's list, and it was number 5 at Eric's list. It was pretty high up for you.
I love this game.
It's a great game.
It helps that I'm playing it right now for Normandy FM, but I think it's obviously the thing that got me into Yoko Taro's work as a whole. But then also, it's one that I think even right now I've been going back to and thinking about a lot because of the way it just speaks to really great ideas of humanity and the actions we take and how they define us as people. The importance of having and taking action even when you are a person who does not feel like the end result is going to go in your benefit, but like the hope you have against impossible odds is really important. And NieR Automata like does a lot of that, and I love it for that. So it's a thing that I've been going back to a lot, and it has really resonated with me over the years. But yeah, it was my GOTY of 2017, and those who remember what games came out in 2017 should know like what that says about how much I like that game.
Good year.
Yeah,
a little
That's
bit.
a hard year.
Not just a good year, a defining year.
Defining
the year in which the modern era as we know it began. I would
Eric,
argue.
quick question. Do you read any Kurt Vonnegut?
I have read some Kurt Vonnegut.
I find Yoko Taro's work kind of instills the same feeling in me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
yeah?
trying to remember if
5 slaughterhouses.
I haven't read Slaughterhouse. I'm trying to remember because I get some of my postmodern authors mixed up. Oh, I was thinking some
Slaughterhouse is
Pynchon.
great.
I have read Kurt Vonnegut, but the book I was thinking of was a Pynchon book. But yes, I have read like a bunch of his short stories and things like that. Cat's Cradle was the one I was trying to think of.
Cat's Cradle's good. Yeah, Taro reminds
Cat's
me-
Cradle,
his
you say?
writing.
Yeah.
Hey, Cat, how's your cradle?
Great.
Rocking.
I want to say that I was a OG NieR adopter very early on.
You get an
and
award.
That was that was kind of one of those first games where people were like, "Can you believe there's a part where it's just a sound novel, or it plays like Resident Evil for a few minutes," kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I have a ton of respect for OG NieR, and I'm also after we did the Drakengard Pantheon, I started playing Drakengard 3, and I realized that Drakengard 3 is actually entirely my shit.
I'm surprised you didn't know that before. I love that for you.
I had
is
it
your
it
shit.
downloaded on my PS3 since like the first time it went on sale years ago, and I finally picked it up and started playing it. I love Automata. I think the way it after NieR's little twist ending, I didn't know how you could build on that, and Automata does it incredibly well. It's such a brilliant escalation of the kind of ending that OG NieR had that is genuinely just saying something with a tiny little tweak. And I think it's brilliant. No notes. Yeah.
But not on your list.
Not on my list because I'm a little freak.
That's very valid.
Number 5. This is the part where I let Nadia, Eric, and Victor talk about Final Fantasy XIV because Shadowbringers is apparently the best expansion of the Final Fantasy XIV milieu.
It's crazy good. It's my personal favorite of all the expansions. I love them all in different ways, but Shadowbringers, I think it works. The reason why it gets kind of taken out is, again, like, Kat, you will get there eventually. I cannot wait for the day you play Shadowbringers, but the way they handle this expansion lets it kind of exist as its own little RPG adventure that kind of steps away from the story in a very interesting way. And that's already like a very good start. And I think the ways in which that expansion digs into the sides of Final Fantasy we don't always think of, the like very darker sides, the very like light and dark, but also what that means and what, overpowering light could be. Maybe too much light's a bad thing. And
which,
but
to be fair, is something that they did back in Final Fantasy 3.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Is like they bring in those parts that I don't think people talk about a lot. I've heard, as every year goes on, everybody's like, this is what Final Fantasy is, and I'm like, that's not what you said last year.
Yeah.
And I think it's cool then to see the Final Fantasy theme park, as it were, like incorporate all of what Final Fantasy is. But I think what Shadowbringers ultimately does for me is Emmett Selk. I truly think that one of the best characters in Final Fantasy as a whole is Emmett Selk. And I'm not just saying that as like
he's not a magic card
to fan out or anything. Yeah, it's this character who is such a compelling antagonist that plays such an interesting role, and his motivations work so well and tie into the broader story of Final Fantasy so well that there's a reason people just go feral for this guy. He is such an interesting, fascinating character, and then gives you that really good foil for your character and the Warriors of Light as they go through the events of Shadowbringers. Like it's so effective.
Yeah,
I think. Oh, go ahead, Nadia.
Oh, I was going to say, Victor's partly to blame for me getting into Final Fantasy XIV as we sat in that pickle barrel way back at Eglinton Center. It was you. It was also Mike Williams, who I remember we were doing PAX one year for US Gamer RIP, and we were walking through the booths before it opened, and just the way that Square Enix had set up Shadowbringers, and Mike's just kind of explaining Shadowbringers to me. It's like, you know what? I might cave, and I'm glad I did. I actually got in before the pandemic, so I was into like Stormblood around the pandemic, and I remember when I started, that was around the time Shadowbringers got 5.3, which is a heartbreaking patch, and it's part of the Shadowbringers story. So I'm just like, okay, I gotta get there. And the bridge between Stormblood and Shadowbringers, I don't know how y'all waited for that to drop, for the expansion to drop, because that is intense. That was just like, oh god.
It's a hell of a cliffhanger.
It's very funny that the free trial ends there now, right? I think the free trial ends on that quest, which is the most like that. All that happens at the end of that patch, and then Square Enix is like, "You want to start paying us sub money?" Like, hey,
I have to say, I saw when I went to FanFest a couple of years ago, I saw a live rendition of Neath Dark Waters, the map music for The Tempest. You could have heard a pin drop in that convention center. Everyone was just in awe. Fantastic music. Shout out to The Edge, one of the most. Here's the thing about Final Fantasy XIV: is theater. It's all theater. the raid battles, the final battles, everything is all theater. And one of my favorite battles of all time is not just Emmett Selk, but the one against Elidibus. That cutscene just breaks my heart every single time. And To the Edge, this beautiful song, which is just like, the reason I say it's theater is because it's describing the Ascians and their feelings. And in these times that we live in, it's kind of reassuring in a terrible way to hear the words, to see how does it go. To begin, we first must see the end. And that's just something I kind of hang on to. And that song was written when Soken he had cancer, as I recall. He was in the hospital during COVID when everyone was isolated, and he wrote that song for the game, and it was just an incredible piece of work. I can't say enough good things about Shadowbringers. It is absolutely worth going through the game for.
There's a single line in that game that has lived rent-free in my head ever since I saw it, and it is, I would get it like put on my wall if I could. I should find a way to, like, I should commission an artist. I can say that on a podcast. It won't destroy my social media the way it does if I tweet that. With all the bots being like, hi.
Hi, here's a poster.
Yeah, here's AI art. No, the scene, no descriptors, just the line. If you had the strength to take one more step, could you do it? Hits.
Yeah.
Like a brick truck.
Yeah, dude. Yeah,
Oh.
dude.
That is, it's so good. I think about that all the time. It is so excellent. Oh my gosh.
The setup that you get in Heaven's Word of the Warriors of Darkness stuff and the way it pays off in Shadowbringers.
Oh, so
good. The Warriors of Darkness story is perfect. It's so good.
The thing is, the last 10 years covers all of the expansions.
That's true.
Heaven's Word came out 2015. So Shadowbringers, I think, even though it is not all the things Shadowbringers does are not the reasons I came to 14 and why I enjoyed 14 and why it became my forever home. But I have so much respect for, like, ARR was just salvaging what there was. Heaven's Word was figuring out what they were doing. Stormblood was refining that. And then Shadowbringers was, okay, well, we figured out what this game is. How can we subvert that and really do something that an MMO has never done before? To the point where you get a story arc that is about the solipsism of being the warrior of light in ostensibly an MMO, and the world buckling under that. What if there is more of you? And I've talked about this on Charlie and Dropouts before, but there are places I wish it went that it pulled back a little bit on. But the core story, Emmett Selk's monologues, the Tempest, even the Eden raids, which I think Eric.
Oh, they're so good.
I love the Eden raids. I have finished the Eden raids. I have now finished the Eden raids.
It's incredible.
It's so good. Rant about I have also 1,000 of your lifetimes. It's one of my favorites.
Isn't that also the Sorrows of Werelit, or was that Stormblood?
Sorrows of Werelit is Shadowbringers. It is the Gundam arc.
It's Gundam arc.
Cat. Shadowbringers you're going to love. The Eden raid is just the FF8 lesbian arc. Werelit is just the Gundam arc.
And then you have the Yoko Taro raids.
Yes, then you have the NieR Automata raid. Like, it is truly bangers wall to wall. Plus, Save the Queen, my personal favorite, which again is an extension of that's all Evilise stuff. That is
they were cooking.
Incredible. Shadowbringers is so good. And again, it's not even the one that I would pick as the, like, this is my FF14. This is why I love being in FF14. But it does everything it does so well, and all those things are buck wild.
We're just back. We're just
put it at number 2 on your list, Victor.
Yeah,
very high up.
It's dope. It's pretty dope.
Robo Riley says, "Kat, we're here for you in your Final Fantasy XIV journey." Indeed. Coming in at number 4, Elden Ring. A game that only appeared on 2 of our lists, but appeared very high up on those lists. It appeared in number 1 for Nadia. Nadia,
Yeah.
number 1.
It's a damn good game, although I will admit that there are some games that I left out that I shouldn't have, but Elden Ring would budge. It's I am not really much of a Souls person. I remember the thing with Bloodborne, as much as I really liked it, I'm like, I feel constrained, I want more than this, and Elden Ring said, hey, what if you could kind of do all that, but when you're in trouble, you can call a magical horse, and it can take you away, and you can try again when you're a little bit stronger. Elden Ring it was kind of like Breath of the Wild, but I had more friction, which is a good thing, because I love Breath of the Wild for how breezy it is and how you kind of feel like you're flitting amongst nature. Elden Ring feels more like a battle against Limbo, almost. Like, everything you do has something pushing back against you, but that's okay, because it's kind of done in sections. I think that Elden Ring has one of the best tutorial areas I've ever played. Because you kind of have that big open field with like these weak sauce enemies until you get to that one huge giant
The
who's
tree
blocking
sentinel, yeah.
yeah, and you're like, oh my god, this got to be the boss. No, it's just a mook, but you have to learn how to beat this mook before you can proceed, and it's as difficult as it is. It's a very good onboarding system, and there's always the case and that brain fart. The thing I love most about it maybe is how, in true FromSoft fashion, you have that fantastic story that blends Japanese and Western myths and tropes, and just gives you this almost a light horror game that also has a fantasy background. You don't see horror fantasy very often, and I like that. I also think that my jaw just dropped the first time I went underground and realized, holy shit, there's a whole new world under here, and it's gorgeous. Those fights with, like, the ethereal deer and whatnot, just so much lore that you have to dig up for yourself. Just, lovely, lovely game. I love the hell of it. Haven't played the DLC yet, though. I will.
I think
It's
that's
hard.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I think that's
But it's
the
really
thing.
memorable. It's very good. Yeah.
Like with Elden Ring, I think I never got it with Dark Souls or even Demon Souls and stuff like that, because those were more you're running through castles and dungeon halls and things like that, but it never got into the natural fantasy in the ways I wanted to. Dark Souls 2 did for a little bit, and I do like it a lot for that, but I think the places you go in Elden Ring and the ways in which those end up informing the world do so much more for me as a place. I think of like the snow consecrated fields,
Yes.
Caelid. The first time I opened a chest and got transported to Caelid,
Fucking patches.
like I just open a treasure chest and then the third impact happens like that.
And you have to run back. It's like getting your underwear
you're just
in the
there
middle
now.
of a lava field.
Yeah, you're just there now. You have to find a fire and get back, and it's so effective. But I think even just the Sofra River, like you were talking about, the first time you go down there is amazing. The first time you find some of these areas, even going into Shadow of the Erdtree, there's a part where you're going down a hole, and my dumb ass was like, I see big hole in ground, I go down there, and I should not have gone down there. It was a bad place down there in that big hole.
Regret.
But it's such an amazing feeling to explore that world and discover and feel like you were unraveling it. And I think I got more of that from this than any other Souls game except for maybe Bloodborne. That's the one other time that I felt like I was really unraveling something actively in these games rather than kind of like walking through the ruins of it. And I know that that's the appeal of Souls games writ large, but like I love some of the moments that happen in Elden Ring, even when the first time you go back to the round table hold and you can pull your weapon out and roll and fight, and you're like, why can I do this right now? And then you find out like why, and it's very, very good. And I think Elden Ring is just FromSoft flexing after years and years and years of building all these different games and all these different ideas, them going like, okay, let's tie it all together and then get George R. R. Martin to write a vaguely Greek pantheon for us of like a bunch of gods. They're gonna all get mad and hate each other and want to kill each other, and you're gonna be in the middle of all this. And
It's so cool.
it works. It's
good.
so effective.
Pick your god. Choose your god.
Also, I have to say... Oh, sorry, go ahead, Kat.
What do you have to say, Nadia?
The scariest enemy ever devised for a video game is in Elden Ring. And it's that stupid sphere that knows where you live. The orb.
The stupid
Wait,
sphere
what?
that knows where you live.
I thought you
I
meant it
can't
was like
remember
the one that
Oh,
like stretches
my
up and like
Google
eats
Home.
you.
No, this was like... there's like a rolling ball that's kind of going down a hill, and I'm like, oh, better avoid the ball. And I kind of went off a ledge and just stayed there, and it stopped and waited for me.
Oh, you're talking about the boulders that the magical boulders that follow you.
The
Yes.
boulders.
Yeah. Okay.
And they follow
when you
you.
said orb, I was like, Nadia's running from like the Palantir. She's like, oh, this
No,
piece of shit.
What's the movie
orb.
about the tire that chases people?
The
Christine?
tire?
No,
that's a
just
car.
tire. That's a car.
There's 4 tires chasing you, man.
There
That's
is a
terrible.
Bus
tire.
that couldn't stop.
Bus that wouldn't slow down.
That's speed.
Sorry. I got the reference wrong. I like
Remember that
Elden Ring
Keanu
because
Reeves
of the
one?
dungeons. I think
They're
it
so
has some of
good.
the best. I think they have some of the most impressively designed multi-layer dungeons I've ever experienced in a game, and I think it's peak RPG to explore them. It's really something special. Also, it has a
is.
double jumping horse.
It does. God bless Torrent. Also, it has basically any Souls-born basilisk can go right to hell. That's one of the most terrifying enemies ever invented. But so brilliant, because it would be the kind of thing you see in nature. Those big, bulbous, fake eyes. But it's the tiny little eyes that'll get you. It's a nice adaptation. It's a great design.
You die in some messed up ways in Elden Ring, like some
really do.
real,
You really
real
do.
bad ways, and then you got to come back, and that kind of sucks.
It sucks to be the chosen.
I have to
Tarnished.
die, and then I have to remember it. That sucks.
And then the dung eater defiles your corpse for a favor.
The movie is called Rubber, and it came out in 2010, which unfortunately means that it's not eligible for our best.
Sorry,
Ah,
Robert.
alas.
You're not you're not the
Damn.
best RPG of the last 10 years. You're out.
Coming in at number 3, it's the game that put Toby Fox on the map. Undertale.
Oh yeah, I love this. stupid game.
Megalovania. Cue
Da-da-da-da.
Megalovania.
Da-da-da-da. Who starts on this one? Because this is a doozy. Okay, I'll go ahead. I was just watching someone on Blue Sky who was playing through the game for the first time, and they've just finished the neutral route and said, "Oh, that's a nice RPG. I wonder if I don't understand why the hype is there, though. I wonder if it gets better if I do the pacifist run." And the answer is yes. That is the whole point of Undertale. And that's what I love about it. It's like you have the great story, you have the funny characters, you have the fantastic soundtrack. But what I really love about it is that it has 3 storylines, and if you want to know every single thing that goes down in this world, you have to do every single one of those storylines. Neutral, you can get through that in several ways. Most people, I think, will maybe kill 1 or 2 enemies, and you probably get an okay neutral ending. And then you do pacifist, and you learn about the True Lab, and then like all of that starts to coalesce, and then you do the genocide run, which is I have never done it because you better bet that
It's
you're
really
going to be
tough.
stopped.
It's really, really tough.
I couldn't
Yeah.
get past Undyne, and even if you do get past Undyne, it's not a matter of like it being tough. It's also a matter of it like really kind of hurting your soul because these are characters that you know and love, but it's not like Toby Fox is lecturing you. It's a matter of if you want to know everything about what went down and how this all happened and why Smiley the Flower is such an asshole, you got to do it. And I just watched it on YouTube. I couldn't manage. But the way everything fits together and the way you have to uncover everything by yourself and do those 3 paths. And by the way, the scariest ending is if you play the neutral run and I think you kill everyone and you leave like a couple of people alive. Sans will imply that he's going to come and get you, like in the real world.
Yeah.
It's really, really fun and scary. And he can do it. Sans can kill you. He's right behind me right now, isn't it?
He is.
Oh, shit.
Undertale, the game that launched a lot of Earthbound imitators.
And the Pope's
And
playing
if
it.
anything, elevated Earthbound by extension. It, as I already mentioned, put on Toby Fox on the map, if only because the songs like Megalovania are so memorable. And people are still talking about it to this day, 10 years later. It came out in September 2015. I think we reviewed it on Axe of the Blood God. I know Nadia came on here and was talking about it at some length.
Yeah, I played
yeah.
it because Bob Mackey reviewed it, I think, for US Gamer way back in the day, and he was one of the first people to
Back in
really
the
talk
day.
it up. And in the chat, Count Zero Or says Kenny Omega entered to Megalovania back, and he came out dressed as Sans. Sans is in freaking Smash, sort of. That's incredible. The influence that Toby Fox has had on RPGs in this past 10 years, just insane.
So this is my number one. This is my number one pick on my personal list. I played Undertale for the first time a decade ago because it was a 2015 game, if I remember correctly. Or no, it was 2016, wasn't it? It was 2016.
I think it was 2015. I think it was
Is it
September
2015.
2015.
Yeah, okay. So this is a decade ago, right at the beginning. But at the time I had just moved away from home for reals, not to like go to college, not to go, but like I was in a different state, working a job, trying to be an independent human being for like the first real time in my life. And something about the story of this kid falling down a hole and having to find his way out of this cave. Like we talk about a lot of the big stuff, a lot of the, there's so many routes, there's so many cool boss fights, there's so much stuff to discover. It's a mystery box of a game, and it is a mystery box of a game. It's also like a little just box of like care and attention about like what this story can be, what these games can be. I feel like the best RPGs to me, and Chrono Trigger falls into this box for me, is like it feels like a developer trying to just encompass like what you can do with the medium to bring joy to somebody else, to encourage somebody else, to give them an amazing story, a piece of fiction that, as Metaphor Refantasio says, like might affect you in some way in the real life. And Undertale did that for me. It was the story about somebody who was kind of stuck and alone and having to get through it and figure out how to get through it. And it's a little fooly-cooly in that way for me. It's a little like coming of age, but it's also this like incredible tale of people fighting for hope even in adverse circumstances, a recurring theme in some of my favorite games. You get these incredible stories of all these characters, and folks like Sans and Papyrus and Undyne are all incredible. And then you dig deeper and you see all the ways in which the mechanics inform this game, all the different ways that they invert the sort of ideas of this little moving the heart around and dodging bullets, and then like trying to basically SMT negotiate your way out if you're playing a peaceful route. But then also the mechanics of how you have to like really, if you just go through and play that game normally, just killing enemies, you still probably won't get the quote-unquote genocide route. You literally have to go for it, and the game responds in kind by saying like, you're choosing to play this way, you're choosing to be this character. How is the game going to respond to that? And I think the ways in which it just feels like this interactive like give and take between a developer and a person like hits so well. It feels like an open dialogue, and I think some of my favorite games from that time, like The Beginner's Guide, did like really incredible stuff in that way. So like Undertale is a game that it's kind of the reason I stuck around, because I think up until that point games had certainly clicked with me. I love stuff like Mass Effect 2 and all that, but I think Undertale showed me that there is something really beautiful to be done in this medium, and there are people out there trying to do it right now. I think of all the indies of that era, even going back to stuff like Bastion, were really like inspiring me in that way, and making me want to be like, there are people doing important work in this medium, and I want to like make sure that everybody knows what the fuck is going on here, and that's why I'm here today. So like I can't not put Undertale number one. I love this game. If I could wipe my memory of video games and play them again for the first time, Undertale would be so high on this list.
Yeah, same. absolutely. That's the one bad thing I have to say about it. It doesn't really have a lot of replayability once you get that done. But hey, it's a brisk RPG. We need more of those.
It doesn't need to be replayable. You experience it once, and then I don't know, if you want to re-experience it, go get your friend to play it so you can sit on the couch next to them and watch them play it. And that is an incredible way to re-experience the things you love. It's also why Ken Shepard and I end up convincing so many people to watch Evangelion because we can never watch it for the first time again, but we can make other people watch it and siphon their joy.
Siphon their joy.
Their joy, yes, more joy.
The joy vampires of Evangelion.
Coming in at number 2, it's the best RPG ever made. Baldur's Gate 3. Larian's mega hit revival of the CRPG genre, the biggest budget CRPG since Dragon Age Origins, brought in a giant fan base, affirmed turn-based RPGs, gave the world Astarion, Karlach, Lae'zel, Shadowheart, so many memorable characters in a memorable world. And it's I mean, what else can we say about Baldur's Gate 3? We've talked about it at length. It's a really amazing game.
To any of the dozen episodes
Yes.
a year and a half ago that are dedicated to Baldur's Gate 3.
We're in the middle of doing a co-op playthrough right now.
Victor, that was said with all the resignation of somebody who has edited our podcast. Who's like, go listen to the million freaking times they talk about Baldur's Gate 3 on here.
Well, I mean, we're doing like a playthrough right now, like you mentioned, Kat. And here's the glory of Baldur's Gate 3 and RPing in general. My first game I played through that I did for myself for Baldur's Gate 3, it had this like lovely dragonborn. He's beautiful. He has a backstory and blah blah blah. And I go up to Astarion and I'm just like brushed off. Astarion doesn't care that I exist. We're playing this Baldur's Gate 3 run through for Blood God, and I made this like Lonk, Pennsylvania half elf druid weirdo who has a weird face and a skin condition, and somehow I rolled a 10 on my a 20 for charming Astarion. And the first night we're kind of like having at the campsite together as a party. I'm banging the hell out of Astarion over there. Eric's getting rejected by. You guys are like having these loser like instances, like getting brushed off. And I'm like yelling.
You losers are fumbling.
I'm yelling in the background.
Wants to kiss me.
But I'm yelling in the background, hey everyone, I'm having hot gay sex with Astarion. I didn't even try, and it's happening. I have a half-elf who's uncomfortable to look at, but he's having sex with Astarion. Go me! And that's the glory of Baldur's Gate 3.
Long's the only one getting any in that campfire, and that's
Long,
still
Pennsylvania,
funny
who's
as hell.
on a search for his cousin Danny, California. Who's, I don't know, she might
Denny's.
be
It's Denny's, California.
I love that. We got to keep doing that stream. It's so much fun.
It's so much fun. I think Baldur's Gate 3, like, to just say it bluntly, effectively, and shortly, is like an archetypal RPG. It is like a foundational RPG, not just looking forward, but it feels like the thinnest the barrier has been between video games and the tabletop. And it manages to do so much of what Larian does well, but also just really recreates the sensations of playing a tabletop RPG and all the like enjoyable moments. I do think co-op kind of like breaks that wall down a little bit more and makes it fuzzier because it's weird, and that's a very long thought for a different day. But I think playing Baldur's Gate 3 solo is the most that I have felt like I was just being DM'd to by the video game in a long time, and it's incredible the way they pulled that off. That game is inspiring in so many ways.
It's something else.
I really admire its attention to detail in the ways that, for example, they do a really good job of keeping you from soft locking the game. They seem to have thought of almost everything. There was this thing where people kept trying to get rid of the MacGuffin that you need to advance the story, and the game kept finding ways to return it to you. So it'd be like, no, you're not soft locking the game, for God's sake.
That's pretty funny. It's like the one true ring. Like, it never leaves you. It can't.
It it's a huge game. There's so much to do in it, so much to find. All of the characters are really, really, really special, and all have really outstanding character arcs. And it's the tie that binds modern RPGs to the dawn of the genre, honestly. And it does so much of what RPGs have done for many, 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 many years, but it does it extremely, extremely well. Criminal Justice says we should acknowledge Larian's 11-year run going back to Divinity Original Sin. And it's true. Throughout the duration of this podcast, Larian really has been on one. They are one of the handful of real success stories when it comes to crowdfunding their games. Divinity Original Sin 2, before Baldur's Gate 3 came along, Divinity Original Sin 2 was not only excellent, it really did a lot to garner them the fan base and lay the groundwork for Baldur's Gate 3. And the thing I think is really cool about Larian is that they just really go for it in terms of ambition. Divinity Original Sin 2 had a DM mode. The fact that co-op is such a big part of their games. And every time another studio would say, well, this is too big, we can't do it, Larian not only does it, but they pull it off with aplomb. So happy to call this one, put this one at number 2 on the list. What is not the best RPG? It's not number 1. It's not the number 1 RPG of the last 10 years. And that game goes to the only game that appeared on all 4 of our lists. And that game...
Wait, did it?
...is Disco Elysium.
Did it appear on my list?
It did not. It did not appear on Nadia's list.
Yeah.
Did not appear on Nadia's list.
Parentheses did not appear on Nadia's
You ruined
list.
it. Parentheses did not appear on Nadia's list.
You
It
ruined
was,
it with the
however,
truth.
number 1 on Victor's list, number 3 on Eric's list, and number 2 on my list. So it was very highly ranked on the 3 list. It did appear on Nadia. Why didn't you put it on the list?
I mean, it's a great game, and it's one of those games where I respect the hell out of it, but I don't know. I just didn't really... Not that I didn't vibe with it, of course. I just didn't think about it when I put
Kim is
put my
so
list
disappointed in you right now, Nadia. How could you
Nadia.
disappoint Kim Kitsuragi like this?
I should have put it on my list just because of Kim alone. Kim's such a fantastic character.
Kim is such a fantastic...
Kim is
I think-
everyone.
I think Disco Elysium, along with maybe Undertale, is one of the couple games on this list that really pushed the genre forward.
Yeah.
RPGs are by nature, a very traditionalist genre. They look back a lot. Baldur's Gate 3 is the definition of the uber traditionalist RPG. You could almost have imagined that being on Apple II and being designed by Richard Garriott back in the day. It takes so much of what we had in the 1980s and translates it to the 2020s. Disco Elysium, with the way that it had its capo types, the way that it talked to you, the way that the character developed, it forced you into role-playing, was the kind of thing I've never really seen before. And the world was so original. It was not your typical D&D fantasy world. It was not your typical cyberpunk world. It was very different. And it stands out as, outside of maybe Undertale, the most original game on this list, I think. Victor, you put it at number 1.
Good for you.
Yeah. It's a dope game. It's really good. I think the fact that it is purely using systems that have been around. I mean, we talked about how Baldur's Gate takes tabletop mechanics and adapts them for a video game. Disco Elysium is still doing the same things. It is still just dealing with rolls of the die, and it is checking things against other things. It is the skeleton of it is pure old school RPG, but it's just doing it in a way that hasn't been done before, and that kicks ass. I think the world is brilliant. I honestly haven't even played through it myself. I've only sat by and watched my fiance play through it, and all that makes me want to do is try it myself and see what happens. But I think it's gorgeous. The writing is incredible. It's a game that is okay with making you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And
Kuno, the pigs are here. Kuno,
Kuno.
uncomfortable in the way that I never want to have to hear Kuno speak ever again. But
it's a game
that is wonderful in and of itself. Yeah,
I really
game
enjoyed
that
doing the
deals
Pantheon
with-
for that one.
Yeah,
that was fun.
I think one thing that Disco does that I don't know if we'll ever see replicated, but I do think effectively changed the way a lot of people think about games moving forward is the thought cabinet / all of the, like, what I like to call the voices in your head, like the things like volition and Inland Empire is my personal favorite, but logistics and things like that. The idea that what if you took the D&D character stat sheet, something that's been static in role-playing games for a very long time, is basically a like pass-fail check, and you still use the same systems there. I mean, it's just D6s and statistics that you can put points into. It's all still the same number-based gameplay, but instead of presenting that as what if these were the things that check whether your character moves through, it was what if your character is the vessel for a party, and those individual party members are passing checks and then making the consensus decision for your character as a whole. It like moves the party inwards in the role-playing equation in a way that I don't think many designers had tackled in a long time, and certainly something that I think CRPGs and tabletop inspired RPGs are uniquely qualified to do, are uniquely well suited for doing. And so you end up with this game where the party is the voices, but you are investing in the party members to make a consensus decision that makes up the person that you are. And so in little ways, you are trying to drop points into your personality to then elicit change on a broader whole of the person that you are. And if that's not like a beautiful metaphor inside excellent gameplay design, I don't know what is. Like, this is an expression of art in like a very base level of like, you have found a way to rethink gameplay design and the sort of like push a button, get a result that we get from video games, and think of it in new and incredible ways to inform how we think of ourselves in real life. That's incredible that Disco Elysium did that. And also, let me tell you, like, if you want games with like mature stories, I don't mean mature and like, oh, there's guns and blood and sex, but like it deals with some really there is but it deals with some really heavy subject matter. I think even people look, I'm sorry if you're a person who got to the end of Disco Elysium, you're like, I think the resolution to this mystery case was rather disappointing. I'm like, my dude, did you finish Firewatch and be like, oh, that wasn't a very exciting mystery after all? Like, that was the point. Big blinking neon lights. Like, that's the joke. Like that. It's such a beautifully crafted game that maybe it says something that studio imploded and we'll probably never get something from that specific group of people.
Disco Elysium thing that could have happened.
It's art so good that everybody involved in it was like, fuck this, I'm out. and we'll probably never fully recreate this again because we have made something so effective and powerful. And yeah, I love it. It changed the way I think about RPGs. It's incredible.
Criminal Justice says, best fight, boss fights in RPG history, chair fight, tie fight, racism fight. It's really special.
Tie fight's up there.
And special thanks to Katie for stumping for it so aggressively when it came out originally in, I think, 2018. And really pushing for it to be the game of the year. At the time, you can go back and listen to it. She was very passionate about that one.
I remember that. I think her and Matt were both really into it at the time. Matt Kim.
Well, Katie, you won. Disco Elysium is our number one RPG of the last 10 years. And here's our list, our complete list. Coming in at number 10 is Octopath Traveler 2. At number 9, Xenoblade Chronicles 3. At number 8, Persona 5. Number 7, Fire Emblem Three Houses. Number 6, NieR Automata. Number 5, Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers. Number 4, Elden Ring. Number 3, Undertale. Number 2, Baldur's Gate 3. And number 1, Disco Elysium. We'll share all of our lists in the show notes, but before we get some of our favorite friends of the pod to share their own top 5 favorite RPGs of the last 10 years, very quickly just wanted to talk a little bit about our own lists. If there's one, there are 2 honorable mentions that made my list but did not make anybody else's lists, and kind of surprised me, actually. I think it's going to be one of the bigger omissions. That would be The Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk 2077, the 2 big CD Projekt RPGs. And I mean, for my money, with The Witcher 3 is, I put it at number 4. It is a really good piece of dark fantasy RPG storytelling. Amazing open world, still gorgeous after all these years. And it did a really great job of taking all of the source material from the individual books and adapting them. There's a reason that it's as popular as it was. Came out in 2015, not long after the podcast started.
Oh my
and in
God.
much the way that Baldur's Gate 3 put Larian on the map, Witcher 3 put CD Projekt genuinely on the map for RPG fans, and paved the way for Cyberpunk, which I had at number 8, mostly on the strength of the fact of its comeback story, of people saying this game could not be saved. It was the big disaster of 2020, and Phantom Liberty saved it. If anything, Eric, I was surprised Cyberpunk didn't make your list, since you've played it and talked very highly of it, actually.
It was a fringe case for me. I think it and Witcher 3 were both like on the edge of my list alongside some other games, and I wrestled really hard with not selecting it, because I think ultimately the strength of 2077 is that I know 2078 is probably going to go real hard, that it's going to go just amazingly well. And that's maybe even why I'd put Witcher 3 above it, is because Witcher 3 felt like the culmination of what CDPR had done with The Witcher up to that point. And I think the story stuff in that game is so well done. It captured the feeling of a fantasy saga inside a video game in a way that I really loved. But ultimately, in both of them, I had to, for Witcher 3, I had to think the gameplay does ultimately hold it back for me. I love prepping for a monster fight, but once I'm in the monster fight, I just never really engaged that much with what The Witcher 3 did in combat.
They're
Didn't
really
feel
fun, though.
unique to
They're
me.
like spectacular to look at.
They're great,
And-
but Ciri's the fun one to play as. And the second I played as Ciri, I was like, oh wait, no, I won't play as her. And then they were like, go back to Geralt, and I was like, damn it.
I'm just gonna put this out there. Hearts of Stone is one of the best RPG quests I've played in the last 10 years. Full stop.
Oh,
That expansion is really puts it over the top. And Blood and Wine is really special as well. Those are really peak CD Projekt to me. And I mean, I think Blood and Wine was the RPG of the year at the Game Awards one year, or at least nominated for it. And I can't even hate. That's like a full-blown RPG.
Yeah.
And the world design, the voice acting, the characters, the way that everything interacts. There's a lot of really special quests that are lodged in people's memory to this day, like the Bloody Baron that was in the original one. Yeah, it really. There's a reason that The Witcher 3 is like very lodged in people's memories to this day.
Shout out, like speaking of honorable mentions, for me, Dragon Quest 11, of course. Dragon Quest Builders 2. Damn it, I gotta see it.
I mean, you didn't put either of those on your list.
Because we were voting with our brains and not our heart. If I was voting with my heart, it would be on there. But
I don't know why.
DQ11 is not only on my list; it's on our top 25, our revised top 25.
Also,
It's really good.
It's a great game. There was shoot, I had another one that I was going to shout out. Oh, Ys 8. Ys is finally getting into the Western collective conscious, and I think 8 had a lot to do with that. It was just for Ys, the first time going 3D, and they really nailed it. Like, it's a great game. I love 9. 10, I've played some of, but I'm going to kind of step off until we get the update next year. So, yay for that.
I think for quick shout outs from my personal top 10, I had some honorable mentions like Wildermyth and Witcher 3, but for my top 10, Citizen Sleeper completely changed the way that I thought about RPGs. It's my number 4. It's basically the reason why I give a shit about tabletop RPGs right now. It's an amazing video game. Go play it. And also, Yakuza Like a Dragon was... I already loved the Yakuza series, but I think Yakuza Like a Dragon was such a brilliant and inventive reimagining of what that could be with a fresh new protagonist that literally if you sat me down and gave me years to say, come up with a protagonist that people will like as much as Kiryu Kazuma, I could not do it. But somehow RGG made Ichiban Kasuga, who is just incredible. I love that boy.
He's such a great guy.
He's such a sweet boy. We have to protect him.
One of the best RPG protagonists of the last 10 years. I can definitely say that.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think Yakuza Like a Dragon was like number 8 on mine.
I love characters who are put up against impossible odds, and yet they always remain cheerful and happy. That's why I love Grahatia from 14. Like, characters who see the worst that happens to humans but keep their faith in humanity is just so rare, so great. Laguna too. Shout out to Laguna.
Yes, we live in a cynical world, so I do think a little optimism is nice to see in our media. Criminal Justice shouted out Monster Hunter World, which, that's the game that put Monster Hunter on the map, and it's definitely one of my top 5, top 10 favorite games ever. Iceborne was really amazing. We were having a very spirited discussion this morning about how much presentation does a Monster Hunter game need? Well, there's a reason that Monster Hunter World ended up being as popular as it was because it had the best presentation and it got rid of the zonal gameplay, which I did really like, for a more open-ended design. And I think it became people really liked that one, and I did that. I did too. Amazing. But Victor, you had the most diverse list out of all of us. There's a lot of interesting ones. My favorite is definitely Sakura Wars fan translation, which came in at number 4.
Would you believe that this was my conservative list?
Ooh, you could have really gone
lists. I can believe it.
Number 3, Xenoblade Chronicles X. Well done.
Yes. Okay. So there were some choices that I made that were sort of, I could have made a more economical choice. Like I included Tears of the Kingdom and Xenoblade X because I think those are two sides of Breath of the Wild. I included Live Alive and Helix 1 and 2, games that I can't believe we never talk about on this show. But Helix also came out in 2015 and is a one-man show that was also doing Undertalean deconstructions of games like Earthbound. Incredible soundtrack, incredible vibes, an aesthetic that no one else has replicated. Helix is an incredibly unique game that absolutely deserves to be talked about more. But you know, I feel like I split these ideas up when I could have picked things that combined those into one. Especially Xenoblade X. We wouldn't have Breath of the Wild if we didn't have Xenoblade X. It's an incredible game. I cannot wait for it to be reevaluated. It's fantastic. I love it. I threw in Stranger of Paradise.
I was gonna say that's the inspired pick.
Number 9.
Choice. What a just seeing those. I've seen a trailer where Jack Kraken is talking. I am Kraken. Blah blah blah. 4 fiends, and Jack is like, fuck you, and like tries to punch him. And he gets like thrown back, and Kragen's still going off the spiel like nothing happened. It's such a great game.
If you told me that there would be a game that was made solely because Tetsuya Nomura was listening to Frank Sinatra's My Way and then decided he wanted to make a game about it, and it wasn't on everyone's Game of the Year list for that year, I would not believe you.
Chaos.
Especially when that game then uses that song. But I had to have paid an exorbitant...
I don't even want to
Yes.
think about how much the
Yes.
royalty fees are.
And then the in-game diegetic version of that song isn't even timed well to the cutscene.
No.
It cuts out mid-stanza. It's the funniest thing in the world. It's so much fun. It's just good. And as like I think Nadia and I are both Dissidia heads,
Yeah.
and the way Dissidia built a world around Final Fantasy I's sparse lore and really fleshed it out, I found really, really, really compelling. And then Stranger of Paradise kind of does that again with FF1's lore, but takes it in a different direction with a totally different tone. And the combat feels great. I don't know. I don't know what else to tell you. It's just it feels so good. God, what a game!
It's definitely on my seriously, I will get to this backlog because it sounds like Final Fantasy that does not take itself seriously. What I played was just so good for that reason. It was so funny.
And it's hard. It's tough.
Yeah.
But the job system and the loadouts are really unique. I think the jobs are really,
The jobs
really
are real
good.
good.
Yeah.
Felt really
Dragoon
good
was great.
to do that job
Yeah.
system.
And then my last one, tossed it in there, FF11, Rhapsodies of Vana'diel. It was the final FF11 expansion that came out in 2015. Wrapped up the whole game in a tidy little bow. Made me cry.
No.
It's and it ties into 14. We'll see if it ties in more to 14, depending on how Dawn Trail goes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's a beautiful little storyline that I thought was just beautiful. So
That's nice.
Well, please look forward to the 1000th episode of Axe of the Blood God, where we look back on the best RPGs of the past 20 years at that point. But
top 1,000 RPGs.
top 1000 RPGs.
The last
no.
century.
One for each
yeah.
episode.
I'm gonna be busy that day.
Well, in addition to posting our own lists, we also reached out to some friends of the podcast to ask them for their 5 favorite RPGs of the last 10 years. And Eric, we got a little video message from a pal over at MinMax, and Eric is getting
Not
us
that
set
one.
up right now.
Not that
Not that one.
A different Ben.
A different Ben.
Oh yeah, completely.
A different Ben.
That's an interesting mix-up.
This is
fun.
the
Edit.
funniest possible mix-up.
Edit.
You
I
said
don't think
Ben,
it's gonna
and I
be
was like,
edited.
Ben Hansen. No, I was like,
no.
wow.
No, let me just let me let him introduce himself.
Special guest. A
This
special guest.
This should work. Tell me if y'all don't hear anything, chat, but this should work.
Okay.
Hold on, let me make sure my sound's right for this.
Hello everyone at Axe of the Blood God. It's me,
I'm watching
Ben
the
Starr.
stream.
Congratulations on 500 episodes and congratulations on 10 years. And thank you for asking what I think my top 5 RPGs are. That's a tough question. And it made me think deeper than I thought it was going to make me think. Which is in the past 10 years, I think we have seen a change in what RPGs are, how we view them, and certainly how they're integrated into other games. And I think that maybe that's the most important thing, is that RPGs and certainly RPG elements are now being integrated into more games than ever. It kind of existed as a genre in and of itself, and now God of War has RPG elements, Horizon has RPG elements. RPGs that were once RPGs are less RPGs than games that wouldn't actually be considered to be RPGs. And so there's almost like an identity crisis when it comes to that. In a great way. You know, it gives people customization, and certainly RPGs are famed for keeping people's attention. If there's one thing we know about video games is that the people that make them want to keep your attention. And I think that's why a lot of those elements have really kind of been utilized. Also, you know, Witcher 3 isn't on this list. Witcher 3 isn't on this list. And someone said, oh, Witcher 3 is not on your list. I went, well, I think Witcher 3 is one of the greatest games I've ever played in my life. I wouldn't consider it to be an RPG. That's sacrilege. I think it's an action game with RPG elements, even though there are decision trees. But then I just argued with that person that if decision trees makes up an RPG, then is Heavy Rain an RPG? And I know it didn't come out in the last 10 years. But I was obviously being pedantic. Heavy Rain is not an RPG, but I think that there is this... The point that I was trying to make is RPGs are just a vibe. They're just a vibe you kind of know when it is. And I instead of saying I want listing a lot of Western RPGs that I really like, I really want to kind of talk about RPGs in the very, very traditional sense that we probably know them from the mid to late 90s. Great examples of the classic Japanese RPG, certainly between 2015 and 2025, and how they are still a viable and very, very addictive type of game. And so I picked 10 I think are perfect examples, and ones that if someone said, ooh, I want to play, you know, a turn-based RPG, what would I go to? And I would say these are the 5 that I would probably pick or suggest. So here we go. By the way, these are in no particular order. They are Octopath Traveler 2, Dragon Quest XI Echoes of an Elusive Age, Chained Echoes, Yakuza Like a Dragon, and Persona 5 Royal. I'd imagine that you've probably already said most of these. I think they're brilliant. They are fantastic examples of what RPGs can be if they stick to a very traditional model. There are shortcomings to all of them in some way. You know, I think that they're unapologetically turn-based games. And in doing so, there is going to be a level of monotony that some people aren't going to want to stick with. And there is a level of grinding, but that is what is the magic for me. When I think of these games, I think of the grind that I put into them. And that's weird. You know, Yakuza Like a Dragon, in order to do the final Millennium Tower, you got to grind. In order to do the secret boss in Octopath Traveler 2, you got to grind. The same with Persona 5 Royal. I mean, I was splicing those boys. I was chopping them up, and piecing them back together like a weirdo towards the end. But I think what really speaks to all these games is the fact that the characters and the story is so strong. I really love all of these stories. The one that actually hit me the most is Chained Echoes. I would sing from the rooftops about why this is an essential game for those who really, really love games like Chrono Trigger. I know Sea of Stars gets a lot of love, and rightly so. Hopefully on your podcast, Sea of Stars will get a lot of love. But not long before that, Chained Echoes came out. And I just think it's fantastic. The story really hooked me. I know some people didn't take to it as much as I did, but I think it is so melodramatic and so big in its ideas, and yet so small in its execution. It's fantastic. And I always felt like the way it levels you up, you cannot over level, which is also great. So you always feel like you're having a balanced and fair fight. You never go into a battle thinking, am I leveled enough up for this? You will always be the appropriate level. It's about strategy and understanding the game. It gives you all the things you need to defeat the battle. You genuinely just have to use your brain. It's a really, really fantastic risk-reward strategy where you have to stay in this perfect zone in order to be most effective. And if you don't, if you get hit too much or you overuse your special attacks, then you're really going to be not doing the game good. I'm sure, like, there's Persona 5 you're going to have spoken about endlessly because it is that good, and the Royal version is amazing. My story is that I played Persona 5 Royal in lockdown straight after having done Final Fantasy VII Remake, and everyone told me that I was going to love it, and I did. I fell for it. Makoto's best girl. I adored it. Dragon Quest XI. More people should play this video game. Sorry, you just should. It's so uncompromising. It's so uncompromising a turn-based game. It's so static at times, but there's just something so incredibly charming from the names of the monsters, which are just so cheeky and silly. And I am a bit biased because I know the team that kind of worked on the localization for it. They were the same team that worked on Final Fantasy 16, but I just thought it was so much fun. Honorable mentions that I would want to go to, Disco Elysium I'd love to put on there, and I'd also love to put the original Ni no Kuni on there. It didn't come out in the past 10 years, but I think Ni no Kuni needs to get more love. Ni no Kuni 2 is a significantly inferior game, so I just couldn't put it on there, but Ni no Kuni 1 is absolutely perfect. I think it's great. I think the story's moving. Yeah. If I could put Ni no Kuni on this, Ni no Kuni is my favorite RPG, probably other than Final Fantasy VIII, ever. So I think it's really, really, really beautiful. These games are great. Yakuza Like a Dragon is great. I'd never played a Yakuza game. I heard they were going turn-based. They went turn-based. I became addicted to it, and I just think how beautifully playful Ichiban Kasuga is, and the playfulness of him imagining being in a traditional RPG, I think is so clever. It's quite an interesting meditation on the nature of turn-based combat, really, because it's always commenting on itself, which makes it so good. I hope that has fueled your thought. There are obviously stunning RPGs that have come out, and just because I haven't said them doesn't mean I don't love them. But I just thought it's a very interesting question and probably a debate that you will end up having. So lots of love to you guys, and hopefully I'll catch you soon.
Yay! That was Ben Starr with his list delivered over VO. Thank you so much, Ben.
Thank you so much, Ben Starr, not Ben Hansen.
When you were like, it's our friend from MinMax, I was like, no, it's not.
No.
It's the other Ben.
I don't know how to explain this other than I want to fist fight him in the rain. I want to have been childhood best friends with him and have been torn apart by a system that needs to pit us against each other. I feel a camaraderie and rivalry with this man.
You are his Cypher. He is his Squall. He is Squall.
Yes, there's something there that I'm like, you fool, you're so close. Why don't you see? Yeah, I need
a Dante and Virgil type thing going on here.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
God, I mean, that
maybe
was
you'll
wonderful.
meet face to face in a pickle barrel.
That was beautiful message.
It was. That was very nice.
When I told y'all you weren't ready for the directions in which that VO was going, because I heard that before we went live, and I was waiting for then is Heavy Rain an RPG, and just seeing all of your reactions to it in real time.
Yes, because it has a P scene. I don't know. Was Heavy Rain the one with the P?
Is it the one?
Reset the clock. I love that after we put Witcher 3 in the honorable mentions, he came right out and was like, well, I wouldn't put Witcher 3 in the list, but also I hope that you were talking a lot about Dragon Quest XI. I was like, hey.
Yeah, people in the chat were saying like, wow, Ben just fits right in, immediately comes in talking about Dragon Quest and what really is an RPG.
Yep, he's honorable. He's
amazing.
Honorable Blood Guardian.
Yeah. The clock is broken. Thank you so much to Ben Starr. We really appreciate having you send that message to us. And we also got a few top 5 lists from several other friends of the podcast. Kenneth Shepard. Here's Kenneth Shepard's top 5. Number 5, Cyberpunk 2077. Number 4, Bloodborne. Hey, Criminal Justice is nodding along right there.
He's a Bloodborne boy.
Number 3, Disco Elysium. Number 2, Persona 5 Royal. And number 1, Baldur's Gate 3. It's a very Ken list, I have to say.
I like it.
I was giving him crap, and I think I was saying like top 5 games in which you can make Ken or something like that. Best 5 games for making Ken.
Here's Michael Hyam's list. Number 5, Octopath Traveler 2.
Yeah, Particio fan.
Number 4, Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Number 3, Undertale.
Yes.
Number 2, Persona 5 Royal. Persona 5 comes up a lot, actually. I think Royal really did a great job of elevating that game.
Good.
Yeah. got it to the level it needed to be. And number 1, Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers. This includes 5.3.
This includes 5.3. Good for you. Good for you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. John Cartwright.
Yeah.
Good Vibes Gaming. Number 5, Octopath Traveler 2. Number 4, Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Number 3, Baldur's Gate 3. Number 2, Dragon Quest 11. Number 1, Metaphor Refantagio.
Oh,
Good choice.
yeah.
He said, it depends on the time of day, the order, but, quote, it feels right. And finally, Alex Donaldson, founder of RPG Site, did not give us in any particular order, but said NieR Automata, Disco Elysium, Hades.
Oh,
Which is an
that's a
interesting
good
choice.
pick.
Sure.
Good
Sure.
pick.
Yeah.
Elden Ring and Cyberpunk 2077. So thank you so much to everybody who contributed lists. Eric, did we get any more lists from our end?
I
from your end?
was checking. I'm not going to rule out for those listening later to the recording that if we do get something between now and when the episode publishes, there might be something inserted in. But barring that unforeseen circumstance happening over the weekend, I think that is the totality of our lists.
I'm never going to live down mistaking Ben Starr for Ben Hansen. But
Someone in chat said it was not on Nadia's list, and that was not Ben from MinMax. And that
wow,
is
Ben
your
really
cousin.
exchanged a lovely Minnesotan accent for just a amazing British accent. Pretty amazing. But and Len Hafer, I put out a call for the best RPG of the last 10 years in the mailbag. And friend of the show, Len Hafer, jumped in and said, it's a tough call between BG3 and Persona 5 Royal, but I think I end up giving it to Persona. They're both fantastic in almost completely different ways, but the cast and the emotional payoffs in P5 edge out the ones in Baldur's Gate 3. Also, the soundtrack is an all-timer, and the art direction is extremely stylish. I think that breaks the tie pretty effectively. So... And a few others. Mango Alt said The Witcher 3, incredible open world, genuinely innovative quests and storytelling, and damn good combat. I'm with you, Mango Alt. I really enjoy the combat. Chris M says Disco Elysium, no big open world or combat spectacle really allows for its writing, message, style, and atmosphere to shine. And Criminal Justice says Fire Emblem, Three Houses for the multiple rich and impactful branching storylines. It is one of the few games that really gives you something unique each time you play it. The fandom for the game is still strong. So, what's your favorite RPG of the last 10 years? Do you think there's an RPG that we didn't talk about enough during this recap of the last 10 years? Send us a note in the mailbag. Respond to us. Maybe we'll make that a tavern segment very soon. Send me an email at cat@bloodgodpod.com or leave a message over on the Patreon, patreon.com/bloodgodpod. And that is it for our top 10 list of the best RPGs of the last 10 years. I think we covered a lot of ground. Now it's time.
Feature length 5-star runtime episode.
For sure.
And now it's time for a series of random encounters.
Oh God.
A Pokemon Presents took place earlier this week, and we got a brand new Pokemon game announced. It's Pokemon Champion, which I will be playing the heck out of because it is a battle-oriented simulator game along the lines of the simulators that you would find online.
Yeah.
And it connects up to Pokemon Home and seems to use a lot of the different battle systems from over the years. And if you get trophies and lots of other knickknacks from a live service game, well, that's it. I'll be playing it on my mobile device of choice. So, also, we got our first look at Pokemon ZA.
Pizza.
ZA. I thought it was pretty good. A lot of people are complaining about the, shall we say, graphics and things like that.
Well, I mean,
it looked okay.
Yeah.
It's a Switch game. What do you want?
I was gonna say this game. There's got to be a Switch 2 version or update or something that's going to be happening, and there's no way they're going to show that before Nintendo shows anything to do with the Switch 2. So I think it looks fine. The thing with Pokemon is the Pokemon themselves look very good, and that's the most important thing to me. I know there's a lot of disappointment in the urban setting, and they have like kind of the wild areas where the
That
Pokemon
looks
are.
cool. What's
The
wrong with the
urban-
urban setting?
The
I
urban
think
setting's
it's great.
funny as hell because they're just like, yeah, we just seeded parts of the city to the Pokemon because
But-
they're Pokemon. We can't do anything about it.
They live here.
You'll tell
They're
Gyarados he's
equal
got a
partners.
The thing I like about living in Toronto is there is a lot of wildlife and a lot of parks and a lot of ravine kind of interspace between the urban areas, and it's not uncommon. Like, of course, he's got like skunks and raccoons that own the city, but once in a while, it's like, oh, hey, there's a deer in my backyard because I'm backed out onto a ravine, that kind of thing. Like, and it's almost the same aesthetic. I like how wilderness interacts with urban life. I think it's very interesting.
It's all the bits from Parks and Rec about how like the raccoons in Pawnee just like own parts of the city, but it's that with
That's
Pokemon.
the way it's in Toronto.
Like they're just like, yeah, the Gyarados have their part of the city, we have ours. Like,
We're actually having a problem right now where coyotes keep coming out and attacking people.
Amazing.
So Pokemon can kind of deal with that. That's really interesting. Pokemon
I hope
attacking
it's 60
people.
FPS on the Switch too.
Oh yeah, it's going to be definitely no.
so involuntary.
60 FPS on the Switch. You kidding me?
One
Can't
can
wait.
dream. That's all I want. A new official Witcher prequel novel has been announced and will focus on a teenage Geralt. Dragon Age: The Veilguard. It's already free on PlayStation Plus, so go play it. It's actually a pretty good RPG. Edge of Eternity is getting a sequel, and among others, it has people including the Xenoblade Chronicles designer Ryota Kazama working on it. Monolith Soft, a historic studio best known for its work on Shadow
Not
of
Monolith
Mordor.
Soft.
Monolith.
Not Monolith
Just
Soft.
Monolith.
Not Monolith Soft.
Monolith Productions.
Different Monolith. Monolith Productions. Monolith Soft's the one who made Xenoblade Chronicles.
Yes.
Forgive me. Monolith Productions is a historic studio, though. They worked on everything, quite a few games over the years, and go all the way back into the 1990s, and it really sucks to lose them. They're best known for a lot of different games, but a lot of people were talking about the Nemesis system in particular. It was shut down by WB Games, and Wonder Woman was canceled, which sucks.
Yay,
frankly.
WB. Keep destroying art and legacy.
can't
Just do
believe-
it. Why not? It's all
can't
Rob
garbage.
believe-
O'Reilly says, not Monolith Soft, not Ben Hansen, not your cousin.
I can't
Yeah,
believe
we're doing-
that MinMax's Ben Hansen shut down Monolith Soft because it wasn't on Nadia's list.
So
I'm
this whole
having-
episode's turning into a shit post. 500
Look,
episodes,
y'all.
everyone.
Days since MinMax's Ben Hansen has closed Monolith Soft. 0.
Look, y'all, 2025 has been a lot, so please
Sure
just roll
has.
with me. Okay? It really has been. And finally, Monster Hunter Wilds is officially out, and it's getting hammered in reviews on Steam for its technical problems on
By
PC. Yep.
dear.
By babies? Is that what you said, Victor?
My big whiny babies. Yeah.
You gotta say that like Arnold, like by big whiny babies
Big whiny
who need
babies.
larger
Big whiny
graphics cards. Get that 5090.
Everybody's just talking about Ben Hansen. I'm blushing now. Oh
I
my
can't
god, I'm
believe you
turning
do this,
so
Ben.
red.
I love Xenoblade Chronicles.
I love the little cat ladies.
Use the power of the
Monster Hunter-
Monado.
It's Ben Hansen is not on Nadia's list. Huh. Monster Hunter Wild immediately shattered series records. I believe it actually had higher concurrence than Elden Ring and several other games when it came out, and it has it does have performance problems. I'm playing it on a pretty good computer. I have a 4070 Super, and I've had weird stuttering and frame rate drops, and I've had to tinker around a lot with the actual settings in order to keep it reasonably above 60 FPS, which is kind of all I demand from it. And anybody who's below that or has a worse CPU is probably going to have a bad time.
I have a
So you're gonna-
3060, but I'm playing it on PS5. That's what I was saying before the show started. You know, everyone's like, oh boy, Monster Hunter's coming. And then you get online, everyone's just complaining about it stutters, it doesn't run this, da da da. And that's always the case with these big games. Everyone's just like so angry. And that's why I'm like, people, you gotta settle for consoles. You gotta learn how to settle.
Oh boy, Victor and I are both about to play devil's advocate a little bit here. I saw both of us make the same expression at the same time. Like, well, I do think the aspect of like frame gen is super necessary for this game to run on most systems, but especially on some systems, is interesting to note in terms of like what does AAA production look like nowadays. Yes. I do think this is an interesting portent of the future, and especially as we look towards a Switch 2 that a lot of people are hoping is going to use tools like DLSS and frame gen and things like that to potentially make lower end hardware do higher end stuff. It's worth looking at, like, how does Monster Hunter Wilds, which is probably the biggest release of the year so far, it is having weird idiosyncrasies might even be the better term. It's doing weird stuff on people's PCs, and it's interesting to see that as the space develops.
It's on the RE engine, and I think it kind of pushes the RE engine to the limits. The RE engine's been around for quite a while at this point, so some people were talking about it, how it looks somewhat muddy at times. And I definitely agree with that, especially at the beginning. But once you get much further into the game, you start seeing some really, really cool effects. And I've really enjoyed several of the monster fights. The giant octopus fight, A+, I have to say. Riley was saying 60 FPS is like, I don't know, this weird benchmark that has nothing to do with the quality of the game itself. I guess this is just a personal preference for me. I like playing action games in 60 FPS, and because the 30 FPS just feels pretty janky and slow. I really notice the difference, honestly, at this point. That's why I play a lot of games on Steam Deck at this point, because if I can get it to 40 FPS at least, my brain tells me that's good as. So, yeah, I'm a little bit of a frame rate snob, so sue me. That's why I'm playing on PC. But Monster Hunter Wilds is out, and I think we're going to be trying to do a Mon Hun Monday stream, Eric?
Very soon.
Question mark?
Very, very soon.
Yeah.
Potentially even this coming Monday, as you are hearing this podcast live on your feeds. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be excited to do that. Eric, Nadia just got started, so maybe we can help Nadia get through some of the early hunts.
Yo, Nadia, you've got to compile some shaders. That's the true first raid boss in this game.
It's like a good 20 minutes. It's crazy.
Tell the place I have to do it. I'm too lazy. That's why I bought it.
I have a lot to say about this subject, but this episode is too long already, so
I keep having that moment where I keep looking over at the runtime and being like, well, we could keep going.
Boy, do I want to open an entire can of worms? Yes. And I do not, so...
Couple more items for you before we move on to the Nostalgia Nook. Fable was delayed. It was pushed into 2026, and we got some new footage of it from the pre-alpha. It was shown on Xbox's podcast, and I was watching it before the show, and I have to say, it looks like Fable. Very stylized in that regard. It brings me back to the Xbox 360 games. And I also think it looked really, really good, especially the forest sequences. The fidelity was very strong, especially given how relatively early it seems. I guess some people were complaining about the character designs, that kind of thing. But the stylization was very Fable to me, so it seems pretty faithful to what Lionhead was doing back in the day. Was there any excitement or interest in Fable?
I mean, it's not coming out till 2026, so that's fine with me.
And who knows where I'll be at that point? So like,
who knows?
I do like. This is going to sound weird. I like the concept of Fable, and I say that because the only Fable I've played is Fable 3, a notoriously bad Fable. But I do when I played that game, I was like, I enjoy what this game is doing. And then people were like, if you like Fable 3, like, you will really like Fable 1 and 2 and probably like Fable 3 less. And so I was like, oh, word, that's crazy. Okay. And then I just never played Fable 1 or 2. So I'm really looking forward to this Fable at some point down the line as potentially being more Fable and possibly even better Fable. But it's a figment of a thought at this point. We've seen a few trailers and some alpha footage or whatever, but like, it's still something that feels so far away, and there's other stuff that I care about right now.
And last thing I want to highlight, you should go check this out. Greg Zeshik, one of the co-founders of BioWare, appeared on Simon Parkin's podcast, My Perfect Console. Really interesting interview. Greg hasn't been in the public eye for quite a long time. They had some interesting things to say. They were kind of harsh on EA, saying, among other things, that they were a bit too corporate and that they gave you just enough rope to hang yourself with, which is all sentiments that I agree with.
Just a bit too corporate. Like, oh, that shark's got just a few too many teeth.
It's a little bit. But this got me. He said, if the Old Republic had been super duper successful, Ray Musica, and I would have probably launched a bid to try and take over EA from the inside, being the corporate pirates that we are. But it needed to be like $2 billion a year successful. God. It didn't work out, so I was like, I'm fine.
Hostile takeover in Edmonton.
He looked around and said, this isn't for me. It's too corporate. And he went and brewed beer, and I have to say, good for him. Go live your best life, Greg.
Another quote for the BioWare sickos out there that was going around from this was him saying that basically they wanted to potentially push Jade Empire to the launch of the 360 instead of the tail end of the Xbox's life, which would have given it more time for them to refine combat and other stuff. And maybe Jade Empire could have then been a third franchise pillar for BioWare alongside Mass Effect and Dragon Age. And Xbox basically told them, no, just launch it at the end of the Xbox's life. It's fine. and Greg was on there saying something to the effect of like it was a moronic piece of advice. And it was very funny. Highly recommend you go listen to that. Yeah. It's funny to imagine the world in which Jade Empire is, rather than an end of Xbox oddity, it is the only RPG for the 360 at launch and ends up being something completely different because of that. Interesting to think about that possibility.
Yeah.
They're missed, honestly. They were really good. I had the opportunity to meet them many, many years ago. They always seemed very grounded. They had the hobbyist mentality, but they were running a game studio. And when they departed, it's not surprising that BioWare started to go kind of a different direction. And if anything, EA's only gotten more corporate over the years. So go check it out. Go listen to it. They reminisce on the Mass Effect 3 ending, among other things. And it's good to have one of the doctors popping out and chatting about things. But that's it for the tavern. Nadia, take us home on this 500th extravaganza.
I mean, how do you even do that? I was trying to think of a good thing to say, and it's like, well, I have a story of this one girl who pulled something out of a dog's ear and threw it against the wall and it stuck, but I'm not going to tell that yet. Just been... Sorry, what did you say?
Is there more to that than that part of the story?
Yeah,
I'm not going to tell that story immediately after telling that story.
Well, I mean, there's a bit more to it. Like, I worked with a girl from Australia this was when I was a dog groomer, and she was just kind of there on a work visa because her goal was to sleep with as many Canadian men as possible. She did. Good for her.
There is more to this story, okay?
Yeah, and she was grooming a poodle, and the poodle was in really terrible shape, and she was just exclaiming the whole time in her Australian accent. And then at one point, she's cleaning the ears, and she pulls something out, this huge black thing. We don't know what it was to this day. And she screams, and she throws it, and it sticks on the wall. Just
like a spaghetti noodle, just
like a spaghetti noodle. Yeah. And I mean, I wanted to kind of go into like, how nice it's been to just kind of be here with y'all for 500 episodes as someone who had no freaking idea what she was doing with her life, like, how old am I? Like 20 years ago. It's just like when I was playing games in 2000, like I was so directionless in life. I was just like, I failed college. I didn't really have any job prospects. And this was in the era when if you weren't in college or had some kind of college education, you were a loser, you were finished, you had nothing going on in your life. Like no matter how smart or how dumb you were, it's just there was one path you could take and that was it. So just the fact that I have been for 10 years on a podcast that people wanted to hear my voice for 10 years, like that's just stunning to me. That is proof that anything in life is possible. And don't stress too much about what you're doing with your future because God knows, I will tell you up front, you have no idea what you're going to be doing with your life. What do you want to do with your life? I want to rock. No, you might not be rocking, but there's so many possibilities in life. Thank you all for being with me and hearing my crazy ass stories. Like I had no idea I even had stories to tell until one day Mike Williams was like, "Why do you tell such terrible stories?" I remember we were talking about fishing, and I was with Mike and someone else. I don't remember whom. This was in PAX. At the same time, he showed me Shadowbringers, actually, and they were talking about fishing, and I mentioned I just happened to know some kid who got a fish hook stuck in his head. Mom had to rescue him and take him to the emergency room. And he was like, why would you tell that? Why? That's horrible. Why would you say that? And it's like, I had no idea it was a bad story. I just thought it was interesting. The kid got a fish hook in his head. So the fact that I'm here talking not only about RPGs, which I love, but have an outlet to talk about my weird stories and just a community. Maybe it's, arrogant to say so, but I'm proud of the fact that we have built a community the way we have, and it's a good community. Like, you're all good people, good, sane, stable people who like to hear about, RPGs, old, new, Eastern and Western. I think we all share something special right now, and, just thank you for letting me be me, all of you.
Thank you for being you, Nadia.
Oh, well.
To be clear, the only thing that was added to that story about pulling out something from a dog's ear is that it was done by a woman who sleeps around.
Yeah. Yeah. Then she had to go back home to Australia and she got married. But she had fun. She had a good time. Except for the dog. Actually, the first time she saw a house centipede, she freaked out. Because she's like, oh my God, what is that? And my manager was like, don't you have spiders the size of my head over there? She's like, that's so unnatural. That's terrible. And like, I'm not disagreeing, but I'm surprised. Like, I've seen people on TikTok who keep their spiders as pets and they get upset because like there's a huntsman spider and the kids want to feed it breakfast. And you're freaking out over a house centipede. Like, she also didn't really understand skunk smell. Now, that's a smell you're going to smell a lot if you're a groomer. And she was just like, dear Jesus Christ, what is that? She said in a very Aussie accent. It's like, oh, you don't have skunks in Australia? No. Well, happy smelling. Like, I don't know if you're the worst. I don't know what to tell you. Welcome to Canada, North America.
Vic, this is what my family loves to call like unnecessary context of like the person telling it is like, this is crucial context for the story.
Yeah,
you're listening, you're like, it really wasn't, but you know what? It adds texture.
Sure does. What?
I'm cursed with a good memory.
Texture or not?
Happy smelling, Nadia. Good quote.
Good quote.
It's going on my gravestone.
And that's it for the 500th episode of Axe of Blood God. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much to our friends of the pod who contributed messages. Thank you so much to Ben Starr for that really lovely reflection on the RPGs for the last 10 years. It was really nice. Thank you. I'm glad that we now have something new to put on a shirt. What was it? Not Ben Hansen, not Nadia's list.
Min-Max's Ben Hansen closes Monolith Soft because it wasn't on Nadia's list.
Folks, it's been a hard year. Just roll with it, okay? Sorry. I gotta go play Monster Hunter Wilds in 60 FPS. Apparently, RE Engine is the Merlot of RPG engines or something. I don't know. That's what the chat was saying. If you enjoy the show,
Riley's comparison of graphical fidelity to wine, but I can't dissect that now. We have to end this
We do
show.
crucially have
Also-
to end this show.
Yeah, I have a big announcement to make also, but I'll save it for later. Whatever.
No,
the hell are
maybe
you-
you
what the
can't
hell are you
say that.
talking
You
about?
can
Is that for
drop
real?
that and then walk out. No, what's the announcement?
You can't give me shit for not telling you about a woman pulling a thing out of a dog's ear and throwing it against the wall.
Yeah,
and then
hold
say, "Oh, I
on.
have a story. I'm going to
What's
tell
the
you
big
later."
announcement?
Oh, we're Charlie and Dropouts is coming back. Stay tuned.
Hell yeah!
Yeah!
I am so
Let's
happy. I was
go.
going to announce that, but then I forgot. Thank you, Victor.
Set
When's it
aside
coming
your
back?
Monday mornings. It's going to be very soon. Very
Yes.
soon.
Yes.
Very soon.
Yeah.
Charlie and Dropouts is coming back. You can get access to that. The $5 listeners get the access to certain episodes of Charlie and Dropouts. We also have a free feed version, but
Yeah.
stay tuned for more details coming soon. In the meantime, if you enjoy the show, patreon.com/bloodgodpod. Subscribe to our newsletter. We have lots of new merch for Axe of the Blood God 10th anniversary at shop.bloodgodpod.com. And also, you can watch us on Twitch every week, twitch.tv/bloodgodpod. Like and subscribe. We had a really great crowd this week for our 500th episode. Long may it continue, and stay tuned for Monhunt Mondays, possibly starting this Monday. Keep an eye out. We'll see. We're going to go hunt some monsters together in high fidelity. Be a lot of fun. But in the meantime, thank you so much all for listening over the past 10 years. It's been a real treat and a real pleasure to be seeing all of you. It's been a real treat to see all of you on the Discord. You're an incredible community. And I look forward to another 10 years after this. I've been your host, Cap Bailey. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the podcast. We'll be back next week. And until then, for Nadia, Eric, Victor, and myself, thanks for listening and happy adventuring.
I love you. Bye.